This is part 2 of how to brain tan a rabbit hide. In the last video, I showed you how to safely store your hide for later so you can tan it at a later time if you're busy when you process the rabbit. I also showed you my favorite homemade and food grade pickling solution. That makes the scraping process so easy you really don't even need a knife. Then we peel/scraped the hides, and my rabbit heads were still frozen in the freezer, so we cut into the skulls while those were still frozen, and then we needed to wait for them to thaw. So in this video, I'll be showing you how we cut into the skull, extracted the brains, put those brains onto the skin. I'll also be showing you how to tan with an egg instead of a brain if that makes you uncomfortable. I'll show you a little bit of scraping inside at my kitchen table. After that, we'll clean those hides up, dry them out a little bit, work them, and soften them. By the end of this video, they'll be super soft and fluffy, and you can leave it as is and call it a day. Or you can continue on to part 3 to smoke the hides, which is a completely optional step, but it takes the hides from being water resistant to waterproof. I'm not putting the smoking process in this video because I want to get this one out to you just as fast as I can. The first time I tanned pelts, I let them sit in the brine for 7 days and then I scraped them. But I've since learned that rabbits are thin enough that it's okay to put them in there for 5 days, do a peel, put them back in for 2 more, and then whatever is left that is usually really difficult to get off comes off super easy. So from now on, I'm going to do 5 days in the brine, a scrape, 2 more days in the brine, and then another scrape. We're using a guide for our saw that makes this a lot more stable and easy. Remember that the eyes touch the brain on the sides and the ears touch the brain from the top. That makes it super easy to know where to cut. To my knowledge, this is the only video showing you how to extract a rabbit brain. I watched a ton of videos here on YouTube and also university dissections, and none of them actually showed the process. So this is something we came up with ourselves. If you have a better option, I would love to hear from you. Since the brain was still frozen solid, I had to let it thaw out by the stove for a while. I've found that most animal brains have this umami scent. It's a little jarring that it looks and smells like a shiitake mushroom. I try to spend as much time with my kids during the day as I can, so a lot of my projects like this one get pushed to after dark, which is why I'm doing this at my kitchen table. The borax and takeout container is where I am dehydrating the rabbit feet. One of these domestic rabbits was pretty small because she was just not gaining weight and I was really afraid to put her through that deep freeze we had. We ended up dispatching her earlier than we like, and young rabbit pelts tear super easy. The snowshoe hare was also relatively young, so we had similar issues there. But if you look at these bigger pelts, they are 14 weeks old or older, and the only issues with them are where I occasionally had to slip with the knife. When I brain tanned my deer, it was very easy to see that there was plenty of brains for that pelt, and small wild rabbits seem to have plenty of brains for their hide too. But for some reason, I started second guessing myself with these domestics, and I ended up putting 2 brains on this one. In hindsight, I wish I had just put those brains into a little cup and then mixed it up with just a small amount of water so that way it would spread easier. And that would have let me do 2 hides with 2 brains. So here's your chance to learn from my mistake. When you do this, do not set that head down on your pelt because it will stain it red. It didn't bleed through onto the first side, but it made that leather red. I should have known better. If using forbidden strawberry jam isn't your thing, you can actually use an egg too. This was actually my first time using eggs to brain tan. You're supposed to just use the yolks on this, and that yolk is actually quite a bit larger than the rabbit brain, which is why I am really unsure why I decided to put 2 yolks on this one pelt. It didn't hurt anything, but it was just a lot harder to clean up later. And when it came to that really small snowshoe hair, I wish that I had only used half of a yolk because it was just a lot, and like I said, it got really chunky on there and it was kind of hard to wipe off later. Do you want more? Do you want this? Take. Oh, that's a good boy. After the pelts were fully coated, I left them to sit overnight. I think you're supposed to throw a wet towel over to keep it damp. I didn't do that. When I came down the next morning, it was still pretty damp, but I went ahead and I misted it with just a little bit of water. You should leave your brains or eggs on the pelts for 24 to 48 hours. I left mine on there about 30 hours before washing it off. At this point, the pelts had stiffened up a little bit, but they were still pliable and there was no crunch to them. I just took a wet rag and wiped them off at first, and then I took an old dish scrubbing brush that I no longer use for dishes, and I used that to really get in there. I used a small amount of dish soap on that pelt that had 2 eggs on it, and then also on that snowshoe hair that had 1 egg yolk on it. It was just on there so thick I needed a little bit of something to break it up. I strongly recommend not doing this after arm day because my arms were screaming. The only thing that kept me motivated here was how satisfying it was to see all of that come off and feel how velvety soft the leather was. This is so soft, it feels like a suede leather. Like a very expensive purse right here. So that is breaking in really nicely. This needs a little more. This is pretty nice over here. This is the best right here though. Where I've put the most time. It's so soft. And the hair is still dry. So this is pretty water resistant so far. After I smoke it, it should be even more so. Yeah. Really soft, really velvety. Especially on the hair side. Look at this, let's see. See, there's a little, you can see a little daylight right there. On this spot, because I made a mistake. Been doing this a while and I still make mistakes, so a little bitty hole right there. So you can see daylight there. But the rest of that is thick. This is the one you guys have probably been waiting for. This is the brain tanned one. I'm a little worried. The blood didn't go through here, but I took this severed head and I set it on here. And now there's a blood stain here and right here. I'll see if that'll come out. If not, you learned from my mistake. The hair's pretty matted on this one. I think once I kind of soften it up and it fully dries, you won't be seeing daylight through here.
Yeah.
What do you not like about this?
I don't want this locked.
It's locked. Yeah, it's locked, isn't it? There's nothing in there.
Yeah.
Does it have you frustrated?
Yeah.
Yeah. After that, I cleaned my sink up. By the way, if you have any good recommendations for getting this yellow stain out of there, I am all ears. I've used the melamine sponges like a Mr. Clean, but that doesn't work. I set the pelts off to the side with the fur down and the leather up so they could dry a little bit. And of course, we had to go check on our new babies. These are out of Samantha and Jake. I love American chinchillas because they have this beautiful natural ring in their coats. I lined my pelts up like this because I was afraid I was going to have to trim a lot off of them to make this king-size blanket. But now that I'm looking at them, I see that they can alternate and I can probably get away with trimming off a lot less. And that means I'm going to have a lot less waste. If I did the math correctly, I'm going to need 12 pelts side by side like this, and I will need 6 rows of those 12 pelts to make my king-size blanket. I initially thought I needed 200 pelts, and now it looks like I only need 72 in total. That is great news for me. To remove any loose hair that your rabbit might have been shedding at the time that they were dispatched, you'll want to take a pet brush and brush them out. Or you can do things the traditional mountain man way and put them into your dryer with 0 heat on just tumble for about 30 minutes, and all of that loose hair will be collected into your lint trap. So for now, I'm going to condition these with the homemade lavender deer tallow. I think I have a short here on YouTube showing how I did that. I have been using that on my dry hands this winter, which has been lovely. And now I'm using it to condition these pelts. You can also make a body butter tallow from the fat from your rabbits. In another video, I'll show you what I'm doing with all of my leftover rabbit fat. It's basically the same process, except this time I am infusing the peony petals into an oil, and then I'm rendering that rabbit fat into a tallow or lard. I actually don't know what that's called. And then I'll be mixing that with lye to make a bar of hand soap. Make sure you come back for that. And if you haven't already, make sure you check out my other videos on rabbits. I'm doing a whole series on how to dispatch and process a rabbit so that way it is humane and you are not wasting anything. We use everything from the ears to the feet. I appreciate you watching this far and I hope it was helpful. Thanks for hanging out with me.